But this panel's all about, is climate activism for me? So to kick off, I'd love to invite you all to introduce yourselves. If we start with Nuria.
Hi everyone, I work as a corporate development executive at WWF UK, which basically means working with big businesses to invest in nature, biodiversity and conservation. My passion lies with social justice and environmental justice, and I'll be candid, I'm relatively early on in my stages of finding my pathway with environmentalism, so it's really lovely to be here and chatting to you all today.
Emma?
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm the president of my student union at Exeter, and I do take action with Just Stop Oil, Stop Cambo Coalition, and yeah, I'm still, I guess, kind of working out what my introduction is to myself, because I'm also just like a human being and a sister, and yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Tom. I'm a climate justice campaigner and funder. I'm a trustee at the OVO Foundation. We invest in climate education for children and young people, and a campaigner with the UK Youth Climate Coalition, and we campaign on a variety of things for climate justice.
Cool. Hi guys, I'm Cameron, conservationist. I do mainly woodland management, but I'm also on the youth board for London Wildlife Trust, and that's why I'm here today. I also do various other things outdoors in nature that we'll probably get into later. And yeah, I'm a fellow human being. I like what you said. I like that one as well.
I love how supportive this audience is. This is great. Part of the reason for this panel is because climate activism can mean a lot of different things to different people. Sometimes there can be some quite negative stereotypes, but we want to chat to these guys about what your experience is, what it means to you, what your different experiences are as well. So I'll come back to you, Nuria, because you mentioned you're kind of at the start of a journey. You used to do something that was very corporate. You've sort of transitioned. What made you want to change more into the climate space?
So I used to work for a global advertising company, and I worked with senior stakeholders who were running business strategies, particularly around new business as well. And I started in the midst of COVID, so it was 2021. I was looking for something where I could express myself creatively. I was looking for something that at the time I think I deemed to be quite successful. And I learned a lot from being in that job. And I realized that I was lacking purpose in what I was doing. It took me a little while to get there, but social justice and environmental justice are at the core of my belief system, and I realized that no matter how hard I kind of pushed within this giant corporate, without investment from senior stakeholders, which I was not really getting, there was quite little impact, and it frustrated me. So I decided to take a leap into a global environmental organization. I now work with WWF, but I really felt like that purpose element of my job was crucial in me trying to navigate my way through this world and to convey how I felt around social justice and environmentalism. And I think that's why I said at the beginning, I'm really at the early stages of this. I've made that move. I've been at WWF for a year now. But I think I'm at the beginning of a really exciting journey to get there. So, yeah.
I love the use of the word journey, because I feel like all of you probably have had a bit of a journey. We're all on some sort of journey. I'd love to know how you're finding it so far.
So far, I've learned a lot. I think being in the environmental space, I joined it relatively naively. I think I had a lot of passion, and I didn't really know where to put that. And a year on, working for WWF and just being in an environmental space and meeting so many amazing people, I'm now starting to figure out how I could apply my voice, where I think my niches are, the intersectionality across kind of social justice, environmental justice, I think is something that I definitely want to look more at. So I've had a really big learning experience, and it's been really brilliant. So, yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to you in a sec. Tom, I'd love to ask you, a lot of people could find the environmental space a bit intimidating. It can be difficult to find your way in. So what was your way in?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I started with what I'm most passionate about. I'm a natural scientist at heart. I love nature and wildlife. So started in school just with the, local eco group, planting a wildflower meadow, putting up bat boxes, sort of, starting with what I knew and what I was passionate about, and then through that, started to get involved in the school's recycling and their energy usage, and then slowly we were pushing for solar panels and electric vehicles on site, and it sort of was that gateway into other things, those sort of smaller actions which you might think don't necessarily have an impact, but they're still a great way to get to know the environmental space, get to know what you're comfortable with, and then go on to other things. And then from there, started organizing conferences similar to this. Did the youth strikes back in 2019. It was sort of a real, gateway into other forms of activism.
And you, one of the things you do is the OVO Foundation. Could you tell me more about that?
Yes, yeah. So we're the charitable foundation of OVO, and we invest in climate education. So we have invest in various different projects across the UK to try and get children and young people into nature in the first place, particularly for those in marginalized communities. Access to nature, it can be very difficult, and a lot of studies show that simply being in nature makes us more aware of those environmental issues, will make people more pro-environmental, so having that access to nature is really key. And then we also invest in climate activists as well, in projects across the UK to get more people into climate activism, into climate leadership, giving them sort of pathways through, whether that's in school or in uni or afterwards, to get involved in more sort of climate spaces.
Okay, thank you. Because you've spoken about being out in nature. I'll come to you next, Cameron. I guess my question for you is, you have a few different roles. Why is conservation important to you? And can you tell us a bit more about the different projects you work on?
Yeah, sure. Conservation is important to me because I guess, it's how we continue to have longevity as humans here on planet Earth, and it's just having that innate responsibility that, Naria's been feeling from the beginning. I've always had that feeling like I want to be doing good out in my community. So I began volunteering with TCV, which is the Conservation Volunteers, slowly doing bird boxes, the meadows. It always starts off similar to that. And you start to learn more, you meet people, you realize that everyone's on their own journey and they all do different impactful things, and then you start to figure out your piece to that puzzle. And slowly I progressed on to join the London Wildlife Trust, and now I'm on the youth board, which works with the executive board and the board of trustees, and we basically put together plans how we can infiltrate and make it more accessible for communities in London. And they're at the forefront of that. They do paid traineeships, which is quite it's not the most common thing across the trust. So London Wildlife Trust is a part of the National Trust, and there's only about 4 or 5 others that pay young people to do that. So yeah, London Wildlife Trust are really at the forefront of having a voice for the youth, giving a voice to the youth. So that's it. What was the second part of the question?
Can you tell us a bit more about the different projects you work on?
So the different projects. So I have my own thing called Off Grid, which I started off my own back, and it's doing workshops for children across London and just getting them out in nature in any way they can. So it could be a walk, it could be sowing a meadow, it might just be a creative writing task based on like collecting things from the garden and writing a poem about it, things like that. Anything to do with off-grid, so that's where the name came from, and I just wanted to be able to put that on. And again, London Wildlife Trust have allowed me to do that, so they've given me space and been like, you can use our facilities for free. So they really are about empowering, and that's why I'm on the youth board, and I love it there, and I've been there since 2021 now, and I've been volunteering since 2029, and not 2029, 2019. I was living in the future, I'm getting there, but yeah. That's it, I think. And TCV, I'm a senior project officer for TCV as well. So we do the Green Gym, which is going into a community, starting a volunteering group, and they come, and by the time they keep coming, we give them all the tools, and we'll say, you guys now have this, and then we go to another park and another park. So there's about 50 of them, and they call them the Green Gym, and I'm a project officer for one of those. So it's really cool, really cool.
Wow. There's a lot of variety on this panel. I like it. Over to you, Emma. So you are extremely active in the environmental space. You work on loads of different projects. It'd be great to hear about a couple of them. And then also maybe for you, have you found any stereotypes in activism that have limited you maybe?
Yeah, it's interesting hearing what you think about my work, because I guess like when you're constantly kind of like doing stuff, it's hard to kind of step out and see, oh, there's a lot of things going on here. Yeah, I mean, I'll answer like the second bit of the question with some examples, I guess, of stuff that I work on. So with regards to like, yeah, stereotypes of activists, I mean, I take action with just stop oil. So, I mean, I guess that's like the extreme end of like just how much like activists are kind of portrayed in the media. And yeah, I think like direct action, taking any form of like direct action which is disruptive, you do face a lot of backlash from like, yeah, the media, from just general. It's very easy to kind of use activists to blame, and maybe as a form of kind of relinquishing like responsibility for taking action potentially and kind of putting it in a box. I think the reason that there are like stereotypes around activists, like especially at the moment, like climate activists, is because in our kind of like society, like how it's set up at the moment, we don't allow this space for people to take action along a spectrum as much. I think it's either like you are an activist or you aren't, and it's how do we like collectively empower like everyone to do a little bit of activism. And I think it is like a shame, I guess, that environmental activists have been kind of like put in this box, because at the end of the day, we're just caring, but in a disposable, throwaway consumerist society that is so destructive just in how everything works, like how our economy is based on growth and everything, that if you're taking time out of that system of, you know, getting a career, getting a house, getting a job, getting more stuff, if you are like actively deciding to say no, like we need to resist this status quo, and that is a form of activism, like that's not valued right now, I guess, because we are like resisting the norm, we are resisting making money as the norm and all of these kind of things. And yeah, and especially like taking action with just stop oil. I think when you're like in the movement, it's hard to kind of sometimes, yeah, take a step back and realize that what you are doing right now is actually very radical, by, you know, slow marching in the road or like choosing to keep the climate crisis on the agenda through disruptive actions. And yeah, we are like, I guess, put in this box because in a way, like if we're put in a box by the media and the government, you know, if they're like legislating against us doing anything, then it's easier to kind of like shut the door, sweep it under the carpet and be like, no, that's just like a them issue. Like they're just like radical, militant. Like, you know, I get, you know, you get like the messages. I'm sure like a lot of people taking action have maybe been at the receiving end of like trolls online and stuff like that. Like, you know, it's not great. But at the same time, I think it's our power, and I think we actually need to like shift the narrative, and we can do that collectively by being like, okay, yeah, we're activists, yeah, we care. That's our stereotype, like, is caring really that bad? But yeah, I think it's about creating this like spectrum of what activism is, and it's not necessarily a full-time job, but it's integrated into our daily lives. And I think especially as young people, it's really difficult when we're so aware of the climate crisis to be like, okay, do I need to go and do this for my whole job? Like, am I making a career out of activism or whatever? And it's just this dilemma of like, because society is so stacked up against us, our only option seems to be all or nothing. So yeah, we need to, I guess, shift that narrative. Sorry, that was a lot of words, but yeah.
Yeah, a lot of great words though. Really, really good words. I think my next question is to all of you then, which is, because you've mentioned a spectrum, which I think is really nice, is maybe what advice would you give to people who are wanting to get involved in activism, who are wanting to be more involved in the climate space, and maybe are worried about those stereotypes, or worried about the all or nothing approach? Maybe I'll start with you, Tom, because you're nodding at me. What sort of advice would you give to people?
Sure, yeah, I mean, I totally agree. You know, being an activist simply means someone that takes action. That action doesn't have to be, you know, marching outside Parliament with a banner. That there's a huge spectrum in what activism means. So, I mean, my main piece of advice are really start small and start with what you know. I started with what I was passionate about, and then that grew into other things. And you might feel like you're not making an impact to begin with. You might be doing little small actions. You might be, oh, okay, I'm going to do meat-free Mondays, or I'm going to become vegetarian, or you're doing small individual actions, but they're a gateway into other things that will allow you, you'll meet other people that are doing similar things, and then, you might all decide to, get involved in some community action, and it leads on to other things. So don't feel like just in doing that small thing, you're not going to have an impact, because you will. And the second piece of advice would be do it with other people. Everything is always daunting when you do it alone. I still find going to direct actions quite daunting. And back when we were doing the school strikes, it was only because there was a group of us who were all friends who thought, oh yeah, you know what, let's organize a strike in Bath, let's, get together as friends. So it was only when we came together as a community and as a group that we all felt like we could go off and do that together. So I'd highly recommend finding that group of like-minded people that you can go off and do stuff with.
Nuria?
Yeah, I really want to kind of piggyback off what you were saying. Start with what you know and kind of work your way. That's the mentality I've sort of taken, working for a big advertising kind of corporate. I've lifted and shifted the skills that I gained there to now work for an environmental organization. And now that has given me the space to now think about how I could progress that further, how I could work. I'm a real creative spirit. I love writing, I love photography, I love film, I love communicating. So now I'm trying to think, okay, now I've got the purpose element, I've lifted, shifted. How do I branch out further and take more action in a way that really I can hone into? And so I really resonate with that, kind of start with where you know and move at your own pace. I think it's tricky because there's such a sense of urgency, and I think climate anxiety really plays a massive part in that. I know I felt it for years, and sometimes I sit there and question, am I going too slowly? And I have to check myself and say, actually, I'm doing something. I'm being active, and that is activism. And we were even talking about kind of taking breaks from it and sort of checking in on yourself in that journey too, and not feeling so pressured and urged. And I think that's so important, your well-being in all of it as well. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it.
I'd say gratitude is a great place to start as well, because everything they've said is bang on. Start small. I think also having your well-being and gratitude and keeping your cup full is such an important thing. And I think when you're grateful for things, you start to realize how amazing everything is around you. Like, even to be able to come to a place like this, like, there's not many other places like this in the country, and we have this on our doorstep, and you start to realize how beautiful these ecosystems are. It's like you don't have to look far to see how amazing nature is, and then you can start to see the effects of what we're doing to it, and then you're like, oh, maybe I should do something. So, guerrilla gardening is becoming a thing. I'm seeing people out here now. You've got islands and like crossroads and roundabouts that are just this long grass, or it's just monoculture, and it's like, just go there and sow some seeds. Like, if there's someone outside, somewhere outside your house or somewhere where you live locally, if you don't have a garden, just go and plant some seeds. You know what? If the council come and dig it up, I don't really think they will, because most councils have got their hand full with other things. And if they do kick a fuss up, then you kick a fuss and film them and make them go viral. Like, we live in a time now where like kids and the power of internet, like, they're so in tune with it. Like, I'm 26, I feel like I'm out of touch with it now. But like, once the kids get you on film, that's going up, that's going viral now. So yeah, you can just start small and do whatever you can, and you'll start to see the difference,
Emma?
Yeah, I think it's about acknowledging that like the systems that we're up against are a lot more resourced than we currently are. I mean, with like my campaigning at university, I'm kind of forced into like the urgency of you only have like 9 months to run a campaign with students before they all leave. And that's really difficult. And I think also, when you're tuned into the climate crisis on the news, it's very easy to feel that like urgency and sense of I need to be doing everything now, like just me. And I think it's about taking a step back and realizing that if you're gonna be in this for a long time, it needs to be sustainable. And like personally, I went through like a bit of a period of just doing action after action after action and like using it as a distraction, I guess, from like properly like emotionally engaging with it. And I thought like just by continuously doing stuff that it would help, but actually the most helpful thing for me recently has actually been to take a step back and actually enjoy the world and nature and everything, because it's very easy when you're tuned in. Like I went through a period of just like finding it so frustrating just being out and about in society and like seeing cars and being like angry, and it was that moment where I was like walking down the street and I saw a car and I just felt this like anger, and I saw like litter and stuff, and I was like, this isn't me, like I'm clearly like very exhausted from this. And taking a step back and actually seeing like beauty in the world. Like I was sat on the beach the other day and I was just like, wow, okay, like this is worth fighting for, because if you're acting out of a place of like anger and frustration at the system, like yes, it will keep you going for a bit, but what will keep you going for a long time is, I guess it is acting out of like hope for the world. And yeah, definitely joining a group. Like I spent about a year and a half being like trying to be like a perfect like zero waste vegan. But there was a turning point where I was like flapping around looking for recycled dental floss and I couldn't find any. And I was in Holland and Barrett, this was also during COVID, and I had my mask on and I was just like getting all like, oh my God, they haven't got any, like I'm gonna have to buy plastic. And I was just like, what am I doing? And I walked out of that shop and I was like, this isn't right. And that's when I started joining like community groups, and it just, relinquishes that weight of everything. And once I started like speaking to people and meeting people, I realized that there's so many amazing, I guess, activists, people, humans out there feeling the same. And I think taking that step was probably the best thing that I've done for like my existence, really.
All great advice. Can we give them a round of applause for all the advice? I think we're about to run out of time for this panel, but I just wanted to highlight that between you've mentioned like looking after yourself, taking breaks, building community, starting with what you know, which I think are all key things we can all take away from this. And I guess it would be amazing if you left today with a sense of community and a sense of not being on your own, even if it's one person you chat to and you message them and work together or think together or take a break together and just go for an ice cream. That would be an amazing way to end today. It could be one of these guys. Chat to these guys. But for now, help me thank them, please.